Hey everyone, welcome to the K Rene Show live edition. I am your host, K Rene, and I have a special guest today, which I am inviting into the studio so we can talk about some trauma and some crazy shit that we tend to think about often, especially women. And I want to give a warm welcome to my guest host today, Miss Star Rose Bond, who is here. Yes, welcome.
Hello. Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Yo, thank you for joining me. We finally got this done. I'm so excited.
I know. We're riding up that 2020, 21 wave, trying to getting things coordinated. So I appreciate it.
It's all good. Listen, you're a Virgo. I'm a Virgo. We know how life tends to move around. So it's all good. It is all good. I'm just happy that I could wrap you in before I wrapped up my season and just reconnect and regroup for the next season because it's so much going on, but I'm glad you were here.
Awesome.
How's your day?
It's good. It's super sunny over here, so I'm hoping the lighting's good. I'm in Cali, so we got lots of sunshine here, so it's good. Yes. We're feeling the good vibe.
It looks beautiful. Yeah, it's a beautiful day here too. It's sunny here in Baltimore. And nice. So if I didn't have my flag in the back, it would be like a straight spotlight just beaming through. So yeah, it's all good. I can see you really, really well.
Awesome.
So tell me, what made you get into being a trauma therapist?
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's kind of like a two-part series. I was one of those individuals who grew up with a shit ton of hardship, like single mom, poverty, drugs, alcohol in the home, a lot of mental health stuff in the family. So there was a lot of adversity early on, lots of history of abuse, sexual abuse. And so that naturally led me down a life of all sort of complications and additional compounded trauma. And early on in life, I was shuffled through the system. I was labeled. I was diagnosed. I was medicated. I was in and out of corrections by the time I was 12 already. And so as I kind of started to navigate that lifestyle, it took me a minute to get out of it and regain and reclaim who I was in the world. But that ultimately, as crazy as all that shit was, it ultimately started into becoming a social worker and really diving into the mental health field, because as someone who was on the receiving end of a completely broken and dysfunctional mental health system and, privatized corrections, I knew how fucked up we were. And so once I was able to get my shit together, ultimately that really fueled my passion for wanting to give back to others. And so as I went through my academic career, what I noticed was I was planning on working with refugees and asylees, and I was going to do public policy and international affairs. But I got really invested in working with people in all different types of communities. I was in New York City at the time, so I was working in needle exchanges, Planned Parenthood, treatment centers, things like that. And what I realized over a 10-year span, essentially where I stand now, is that no matter who I worked with, whether it was my private practice, you know what I mean, or I was working in the ground and in communities, at the end of the day, everybody struggled with the same shit. And even if they had diagnosis or they had this label on board or they had, criminal history, at the end of the day, everybody was suffering with the consequence of trauma. It was just manifesting differently. So it was manifesting through relationship problems and intimacy. Maybe it was self-esteem. Maybe it was, drug, substance abuse, things like that. But overall, that was this chronic theme that no matter what the story was, we all have different stories and different narratives, and we have different types of trauma based on who we are. But ultimately, that's what we're all working with, and it oftentimes gets misguided. So that became my interest. It was both personal and professional at that time.
Okay. And like you said, a lot of us struggle with a lot of different traumas, a lot of different issues, especially growing up. I had that kind of relationship more so in my household. My parents were married, but then they divorced when I was 6. But the interesting thing about it is that being a child in the middle between two different parents and two different families, you got one side family talking different about the other side's family. And then it's just you're in this tug of war in the middle. And it's just well, I got to be nice to both. And, I want to be okay with them and I want to be okay with them. So it was always for me trying to kind of be that middle piece, that middle area, that ground, so that it's just it's okay. Everybody can still, have me as a part of the family. Like, we don't have to be like, oh, I'm the best side or I'm the best side. Right. And especially with the fact that with my dad, I was really closer to him more than my mom, to the extent that where my mom had custody, I wound up running away from home at the end of the 11th grade and coming here to Baltimore to live with my dad because of the fact that with me raising a little brother who is no longer here, he died a couple of years ago from a drug overdose. And the thing about it is my mom put me in a position like, well, I'm going to go to work. And so therefore you're going to watch him. And so you're talking about 6-7 years of like your teenage life, which is a very important area within growth. No staying after school, no involvement in sports. You got to watch him. You got to, be like a house mother to him. Yeah. And that really pulled back a lot for me as I got older and then had a chance to have some independence. I just started seeing myself getting involved with all these different things and then not really having parents to talk to about certain situations like relationships and how boys are and vice versa. It's just kind of like, well, now you're on your own. So now you're going to have to grow and try to figure this shit out. And then it's just like, well, am I doing this right? Or am I being overly too much? Or is this the way it's supposed to go? And then, of course, we tend to try to push everything down and suppress it.
As a survival mechanism. Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. Yes. And especially in the Black culture where they don't really want to deal with counseling and deal with therapy. Like, no, we don't have any problems. Like, it's just it's a quiet as kept type of situation. And I was like, nah, I need some fucking help because I can't function and I don't want to go through another 10 years of life and then messing me up. And then, of course, if I decide to have kids, I'm going to mess them up too. So I can't keep the cycle going.
Well, it's a challenge. You brought up a really great point because I work with all different types of folks, you know what I mean? Of all sexual orientation, race, whatever. And coming from New York City, I grew up in a very diverse community, but something to be like recognized is that it's absolutely true in the Black community, even the Latino community, like therapy there's a lot of resistance to it, but rightfully so. I mean, the psychological field has been completely whitewashed. It's like colonization in its finest. So it's completely understandable when we look at, different communities of color, why they don't trust, conventional therapy. And at the same time, we know that mental health doesn't discriminate. So it's like this catch-22 of we know that all human beings need support, need, access to mental health resources. But at the same time, a lot of the shit that we've been propagating and a lot of the mental health, methodologies have been completely pushed through a white lens. So it's like understandable why that ended up being, some part of the resistance in terms of communities of color seeking out social services or seeking out mental health.
Right. Exactly. And agreed, especially when it comes to going through the process of therapy and finding some type of help, especially mentally. And a lot of people steer away from it because they're figuring all it is just going to push a pill. And it's going to continue to push in a medication. And I don't want to be on a medication and then that dose and now my system's immune to it. And now I got to get a higher dose. And it's just like all you're doing again is just trying to sleep me off and suppress it to where I'm not really dealing with it. And I think I'm grateful for a lot of different other outlets and alternative ways of dealing with mental issues and health and trauma that's not pushing a medication and is actually giving you some type of activities to do, encouragement, things as far as to take and do for yourself to kind of basically see how to gain and keep moving forward from there without being medicated.
This was a big part of my evolution as a therapist. So although I have this, the credentials and, the clinical skill set to diagnose in my private practice, I operate as a coach and a consultant because although I love the psychodynamics of psychology and putting the dots together, why are we the way we are? What I don't like is exactly what you're talking about, the over pathology of the human race. We are currently right now, we are the most overdiagnosed, over-medicated cohort of human beings on planet Earth right here in this country. And we have a specific target around young boys, which is hugely problematic. Do you know what I mean? And so, and then when we bring that into like intersectionalism of looking at like communities of color, it's even greater. And so this is a really, really big issue, like you said, with mental health, where we are, labeling and then just relegating individuals to this broken fucking part of the system and, pushing pharmaceuticals as a first line of defense. And it's highly propaganda. It's actually a big reason why I don't I value the aspect of therapy in my training or whatever, but it's a big reason why I take a much more, we've talked about this a little bit previously, on text or whatever, the unconventional practices. Like, I'm not your average therapist because of that shit. You know what I mean?
Right,
I just don't get
right.
that. And I don't see people like that. I think it's limiting. So I hear you.
And I think when it comes to a lot of things that stimulate in our adulthood as we get older and shit that we don't really technically deal with as we're younger, and then we try to find a normalcy. And when I mean like normalcy, we look at certain things or traits or even to relationships as far as people, and we're like, well, that's how it's supposed to be. That's normal. So when we come from areas of trauma and issues as far as abuse, mentally and physically, it causes a trust factor for us as we're older. And then trying to develop new relationships as far as not even just friendships, but relationships with people, we tend to get accustomed to, well, this is how it's supposed to be. Totally. So the question is, when we have exes and we know all the traits that they have given and everything they displayed to be toxic, but we still find normalcy in it. Yeah. Why is that? Because we tend to sometimes fall back and gravitate back towards that same type of person or that same type of personality because it's been so normal for us. Totally. Do you think that stems from some part in our life as us being younger and then to teens to younger adults, or is it just the thing that we just feel this comfort and connection to?
Totally. So I'm gonna break it down in a really in a simple way in terms of why we choose who we choose in our life. Even like you're talking about, like intellectually, we know that like that's a toxic thing. Like, those are red flags. You know what I mean? This person is exhibiting shit that I don't really want to get down with, but like, oh, let's do it anyways. Let's dive in, So, or it's like, I always make the joke. It's like, oh, you like Chinese food and I like Chinese food. You were molested as a kid. Me too. Like, great. We're soulmates. Like we get into this like fucking weird mind trip around how we come together with other people. And so this is in a basis of how it rolls. So in your early childhood, whoever your primary influences were, mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, foster care, whoever it is, like those couple of people that played the most significant role in your upbringing, they ultimately set the blueprint for how you give and receive love and understand intimacy, for better or for worse, right? And when we're children, we will take what we can get from our adult caregivers, regardless of what they're presenting, because we need that connection for survival. We need that dynamic. So even if, for example, you grow up with an emotionally unavailable parent or an inconsistent parent or an alcoholic parent or whatever, right? Even when you grow up, or even a parent that's maybe abusing you, do you know what I mean? The fact of the matter is that we have an innate response, a natural response to move towards our primary caregiver for protection when we're afraid and for recognition and safety. The challenge, just like you're talking about around trust, is that when the same person who's putting dinner on the table and the same person who's putting us to bed at night is also the same person that's harming us and abusing us, right? It gets really convoluted, specifically for women, because women, by and large, tend to experience trauma inside the home more than boys do. And so it creates a distorted lens around, the trust factor of the same person who's saying I love you is the same person that's hurting me. So then fast forward that shit 30 years later, right. We have it imprinted in us. If you're not being controlling, if you're not being overbearing, if you're not hurting us, then you must not love me, right? So it gets really, really weird. So that's the one part. That's like when we look at gender, specifically with women, we see this. The other major facet, and this is across the board for all people, is whoever you grew up with, they set the emotional blueprint, right? They create this dynamic. So if you grew up with a critical parent, if you grew up with an inconsistent parent, maybe you grew up with, again, somebody who was totally overbearing and smothering, whatever. This is what happens. You will go out now into your adult intimacy, right? And you will not only attract, but you will be attracted to people who can mimic that same energetic signature as your early childhood. So this is where I make the joke. Like, I know that not everyone is being raised by mamas, but by and large across the world, mamas are in charge of rearing. So like, we're all dating our mother in some essence.
Right. To some degree, yes.
Totally. So we attract a partner, right? That again, it's not personality. It's not like, my man is exactly like my mom at personality level. It's that the person that I attracted has a very similar energetic dynamic with me as what I grew up with. And that's what you're talking about with that familiarity. And the reason why we do that is not just because it's familiar and it's comfortable. This is the fucking kicker. We do it because if I can get this person who's doing this dance with me, right, who's like also inconsistent, maybe they're, a substance user, maybe they're like 1 foot in and 1 foot out and they're breadcrumbing my ass, whatever.
Breadcrumbs, yes.
Yeah. So the reason why we do that is because this person is now representing like a pawn, that early childhood figure. And so in the back of my head, subconsciously, if I can get this man to be more consistent with me, and I'm speaking from a heterosexual standpoint in my situation, if I can get this dude to be more stable, if I can get this dude to be more consistent, if I can get this guy to be emotionally present, even though intellectually he's clearly demonstrating behaviors that he can't be, right? There's a part of me in the back of my head that thinks if I can get him to do it, I'm going to heal that shit from way back when. So it's like we need that dynamic because we need to feel the sensation of what those early connections were. That's why it often feels like, oh my God, why are we so connected? And yet we've only been kicking it for like a month. Or like, why is this so deep? Or it's like high highs, low lows. And it's because that person is mimicking that very, very old wound and that early dynamic. And your brain, from a neurobiological perspective, does not know the difference between the past, your thoughts, and the present moment. So this person who's like playing out that shit with you, right? Your brain doesn't know if that's your mom, if that's your dad. It's just a dynamic that feels familiar and in pattern. And so you attempt to constantly get your needs met in this relationship. But what you ultimately end up doing is just recreating the trauma and the drama over and over if you don't have the awareness.
My mind is like fucking blown because it just all makes sense.
We all have these people.
Yes.
Yeah, this is why people have types. And it's like, I've had a lot of different types of partners personality wise, but if I break it down, like I grew up with a parent that was like really emotionally inconsistent. She was super smothering, Italian mother, like overbearing. And then when she got triggered, she was like, fuck this shit. And she would abandon the connection emotionally. And I have had a lot of partners throughout my life. Like that was a very similar trend, different types of people, but it was a lot of 1 foot in, 1 foot out, a lot of very intense relationships, very smothering, and then like completely out. So that has been a trend because that was what I was used to. And so every time I dated that person, it would bring all my shit to the surface. And if I could just get them to be what I needed to be, it would all be okay. Everything, I would be safe then.
Right. And I don't want to bring, because I hate to do it, but I love to do it. I don't want to always put my sign involved in it, but I'm a very nurturing type of person.
Yeah, regardless.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And I always feel like if I could just, just a little tweak. Well, okay, now I've created a project, like as if this is an ongoing project that I have to get a good grade on. I gotta get the best of everything, and they gotta see all the details. And I fixed it, and I fixed this, and I fixed her, and I fixed him, and I got it all together. And now I've fixed everything from my past. And it's like, no. And we continue, I think, to keep giving these chances, these extra chances. Well, let me just, I can try one more time. Well, okay, because you said you'll do this again. And then we continue to keep getting accustomed to, again, the breadcrumbing. Nothing's changed. It's still the same person. You're still living that same life.
Yeah.
And it's just being replaced with an older person, as opposed to why it doesn't make it easy for us to try to step away from certain relationships because of the fact that we always feel like we need to give it more time. But if they can just do this or they can do that, everything will be really good to go. And it's not.
Well, think about what we were just talking about in terms of like, remember how I said in early childhood, take what you can get from your parent, regardless if your parent is an alcoholic, regardless if your parent is a total judgmental, critical individual, it doesn't matter. That's your parent. And so you need that caregiver for survival. So even if 80% of the time your parent is really horrible to be around and they're abusive or they're mean or they're judgmental, and the 20% of the time they're loving, you'll take that 20% because you need that 20% to survive. So again, now there's your blueprint. That got wired in. So now fast forward 20 years later, your new adult intimacy, 80% of the time, motherfucker's not around. He's emotional. He's MIA. He's ghosting. But you know what? Then there's that 20% of the time where it's like you guys are in it, and you will take what you can get because, again, you've been entrained somewhere along the line in your history that like this is enough for intimacy or this is enough for connection.
Right. Right.
It's super crazy.
And you make it work.
Yeah. And in your situation, you were talking about how like you were the one that was like the glue that held shit together. You know what I mean? You were the
right.
And so probably, I'm going to guess, and I want you to correct me if I'm wrong, but there was probably an element of like, you got a lot of connection probably in your upbringing, and you got a lot of attention, and you got a lot of love in the times when you were showing up in that role, being the nurturer, being the parent, right? Being the responsible one. So you learned that the way that you get intimacy and connection is for you to show up and be like the perfect person, or to be the one that holds all the things together, holds the pieces together. Yep. And so now you have it like, and then that creates our belief system. So now your belief system is the only way maybe I'll keep a stable relationship, or the only way I'll be able to hold it down is if I show up in this way, making sure that I'm holding all the pieces. But that's exhausting.
It is.
And nobody wants a partner you have to take care of like that anyways, but your brain is telling you something different.
Right. And the thing about it is, of course, nobody wants a partner like that. But like you just said, we'll substitute that 20% and we will make that 20% like as our 80%. Exactly. We totally flip the whole script around like, no, it's no, because they said yay and it's okay. And I'm happy today with that. And that is fine by me. And this is better than what I thought. So yeah, they're giving me some time. They're giving me some conversation. They're giving me a little bit of energy. And again, it's a little bit. And it's still only 20%, but we didn't mind flipped it that no, that's 80. No, that's good. And you're right. It's draining. It's exhausting. And at some point, there's got to be the stop sign to stop that shit. Yeah. Because we all know we don't deserve that. So how do we break out that cycle to not keep making this feel like this is normal? This is how it's supposed to be set up when we know better. But how do we stop?
So a big part of that, I mean, like, this is a little bit of a journey into like the world of the unknown and the abyss of you, you know, like whenever we're entering that self-growth process. But by and large, like right out the gate, we all want to start taking inventory and start determining what are some of those really specific or salient core beliefs that we all carry around. And so like most people, regardless of like what they've been told, they have a I'm not good enough story. You know, nobody will really love me if they really get to know me. I don't belong. I'm not pretty enough, smart enough. You know, I'm unlovable. Like whatever your shit. Like there's like a core set of like 8 or 10 beliefs that like most humans possess. And then it becomes the narrative to so much of their life. So everything that you do, right, it manifests in your work. It manifests in your relationships. And it really is, those core beliefs are the unmet needs that you didn't get from your primary caregivers. Do you know what I mean? So in my particular situation, a lot of it was like, I got told for a long time that I was like, because I was an incorrigible child and I was out of control and I had a lot of trauma, but like I was told that I was unstable for a long time. And so like I interpreted that as I'm like broken. I'm like damaged goods. So nobody will really love me if they get to know me. Do you know what I mean? Because I'm too crazy, too fucked up. And so that story, that like girl interrupted story became like the narrative for all the relationships. So for me, whatever deep-seated beliefs you have about yourself ultimately then become reflected in your relationships. Like if I can't attract anything in my world if I don't believe it to be true. So whatever my beliefs are, I'm going to go out into my environment and look for ways to validate that. So for example, if I am really insecure or I feel unlovable, even if I have a smile on my face and I'm looking fly and I'm making money or whatever, but if deep down I'm walking around this life feeling that way deep down, then I can only attract a person in my life that validates that. So if I think that I'm not good enough or I'm insecure, then of course I'm going to attract somebody that, you know, reminds me of that or validates that, or maybe, you know, is, you know, cheats a lot, or maybe they're emotionally unavailable, because now I have gone into my environment and I have literally scanned my environment for ways to validate this fucked up story. So as soon as I choose a person to validate that, now I get to co-sign on my shitty beliefs. See, I knew I'm not good enough. I knew I wasn't lovable because look what this dude just did. Do you know what I mean? Right. So it's like, this is how it's part of what I always tell people. When you really want to change shit up, you don't need the world around you to change. You have to be, as an adult, when we were kids, we didn't have a choice, right? We were victimized. Right. But as adults now we have choice. So you have to be willing to take 110% responsibility for everything that's going on in your life, even if your shit is super fucked up. Because the reality is, once you take that ownership and you're like, all right, everything that's existing in my external world is just a reflection of my relationship between me and me. So if I want that shit to change, even if my whole life is a shit show, if I'm willing to take 110% responsibility, I can also create an empire. You know what I mean? So it's like, I have to be willing to change my internal story and the conversation between me and me. And from there, I'm going to start attracting and cultivating and creating a new reality. So it's like, you're always the center focus, but it takes work on those like core beliefs about yourself. Do you know what I mean? Like I always tell people, the client that'll come to me, I'll have a dude that comes to me and he wants his queen. You know what I mean? He wants her to be a baller. He wants her to be independent. He wants her to be self-sufficient and secure. And meanwhile, he gets up in the morning. He hates himself. You know what I mean? He self-deprecates. He's got an insecurity at every aspect of his life. He doesn't feel good about who he is in the world. And I'm like, check this out, brother. That dude doesn't hang out with that type of chick. Like you don't match up. You know what I mean? Like this dude. No, this dude hangs out with the chick that feels the same way about herself, who's petty and jealous and insecure. Then you guys hang out. So you're always being your match, essentially.
Right. And that makes a lot of sense. And this is why I've been single, because of being told, like, you're crazy. You're crazy. No, you're crazy. And it's like, why? Because I'm driven? Because I have, I expect things as far as other goals in life that I want to achieve. But to continuously be told, you're crazy. And if it continues to be told to you, and it's just like, maybe I am. Sure. And then you really sit and think in the thought process, and then you start nitpicking your shit apart. And you were like, well, I got to tweak this. And what I had to learn is that, no, you're a narcissist. You're the one that's off. Yeah. You're the one that basically wants to use and abuse. And I'm now starting to see through your ways of how you are actually handling your whole personality and pushing it off, because there's something that you haven't dealt with in your life. And I think a lot of narcissistic people attract to people that seem to be more vulnerable, that they can control. They seem like it's more of an easier outlet. And for me, I was like, I have to now, and I wish I learned this years ago, stop changing things about you to just have something or to fit in with others that are not even on the same vibrational scale that you're on. And it's not gonna work. I can't keep trying to teach, train, and be this benefit to the point where it's like I'm doing too much and you're not doing nothing. And so as I look back with the relationship I did have, which was like long-term, like 8 years, and then the off and on of the last couple of years is because I was evolving. I was growing. There were things, and then it was just like, no, I need to keep you right here on this low scale. And then now I'm crazy because I want to do this. And then it's just like, you know what? Let me stay away from people that ain't vibing on that same level. And I noticed that when it starts to happen, especially when the third parties start to have their little 2 cents to say, it steers everything completely 100%. Around. Yeah.
You know, it's so funny because it's like part of what you're talking about is like that process of entrainment. So you could have met somebody on like a really high vibe, but ultimately, if you got yourself into a place where you brought somebody into your world who, again, has these different struggles, has narcissistic tendencies, just straight up selfish, like over time, what happens is you start to entrain each other, meaning like you train that person to respond a certain way to you and vice versa. And then here you are, like you said, you were up here at one point, but now you've been hanging out with somebody who's been down here. And now you're both in that lower frequency together, just trying to create life. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so that's what's like super important, I think, to be really selective about who you choose to hang out with. Like a lot of people don't want to really take inventory. Like we all have that like friend, who's going through their third divorce and they're always complaining about this, that, and the other thing. We always have that friend that's broke all the time. They're complaining about that. And then you've got those people in your life who are like inspirational, and they're the people that want to speak of solutions, and they don't complain a lot, and they're like doing their own self-work. Like we really have to be cognizant and careful about the people we keep in our life, because that saying, birds of a feather flock together. It's so true. Do you know what I mean? Because you want to hang out with people that inspire. It's like, what do you call it? Les Brown, the motivational speaker?
Yes.
So he talks about OQP, only quality people. He's like, and that needs to be an intention. Like roll with OQP and you'll be good, because otherwise, like you hang out with assholes long enough, you're going to become an asshole.
Exactly. Right.
People, you're never going to get out of, you're never going to get out of lack consciousness if you're constantly hanging out with people complaining. So it's really important. And furthermore, not take counsel or like advice from other who all feel like it. You know what I mean? When I am going through heartache, I'm not going to call my homegirl who hates men. Like she's going to be the last person to really support me in that process.
Yeah, the one that's going through the separation and the other divorce, or like that's not the right phone friend. That's not the one I need to know. And it's funny because my co-host used to say KYP, which is know your personnel. Know who you're around, know your company, know what's going on, and know if this is really where you need to vibe and stay. Because other than that, if you are trying to benefit and reach certain goals in life, you cannot keep dragging those same people with you. Yeah. Especially if they're not on the same goal. And that, like I said, it deals with friendships and it deals with relationships as well. So I think it all comes and connects together, I believe.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yes. So you offer masterclass?
I do a 10-week virtual course. It's called Life Camp. And so I do one-on-one coaching, and then I do this 10-week virtual program. And it's a trauma-informed program. We're in the middle of it right now. I co-facilitate with my homegirl, Ruby Christine. And basically it's a trauma-informed, really radical approach to helping individuals not only kind of unhinge from their trauma, but learn to integrate it and actually, support it in becoming their superpower. Because the reality is that everything we've ever been through, as hard and as difficult and as scary as it may have been, what you can do with the right tools is that you can actually learn to integrate the experience, and it gets to be part of like your beautiful unfolding, instead of what we know to be true about trauma, which is like this forever stamp imprinted on our soul that keeps us broken or fucked up. I'm all about helping individuals really extract the medicine out of those experiences. And so we go through the 3 themes like I was talking about in the beginning of the call throughout the 10 weeks. The first few modules are all about interpersonal work and like really looking at insecurities and low self-esteem and these core beliefs, right? And really untangling from them. And then we move into intimacy and relationships and how trauma impacts relationships and what it means to be in partnership, and also really understand what is the point of intimacy, because most people don't know. People just want to be in love for the sake of being in love because we're humans. But
because they think they're supposed to, and there's a certain time, and yes. Yes.
So we jump into that and we really start to break down like what is the gift in relationship and how do you actually utilize relationships with other healthy people to heal your shit, because this is the thing about relationships. They are the very things that can harm you and hurt you, but they're also the things that can heal you. So it's like this beautiful conundrum that we have found ourselves in. And then the last part of the program is all about like learning to authenticate your story, like owning the fuck out of who you are unapologetically and creating a clear vision around how you want to be in the world. So we go through this like 10-week spectrum in a group dynamic. And it's got clinical approaches to it because I have that, that expertise, but we really support you not only content, but then we also support you by helping to carve out a new biological landscape. And so what I mean by that is that people who have trauma, by and large, have an overactive fight or flight, meaning that you're constantly in fight or flight. And so if you're constantly in fight or flight, you never really get to start new training patterns or new habits, because it's kind of like you read the self-help book and you get inspired, or maybe you go on your yoga retreat or you talk to a therapist or whatever, but it's always like 2 steps forward, 3 steps back, because if you don't learn how to deactivate the fight or flight response, none of these techniques will ever stick. And this is why a lot of people struggle in therapy. And this is why a lot of people, at their moment of inspiration or awareness, it only goes so far, because until you get your biology on board to start working for you, it's always working against you, really. So.
Okay. And anybody can join because it's virtual, right? So East Coast, West Coast, up to okay. Got it.
From all over the world, we got people, and we're going to be launching again in June. And we are super invested in terms of making our program accessible to as many people as possible. So there's tiered pricing, and we offer scholarships too when need be. We're really excited to just get the material out there to whoever needs it.
I like that. I might need to do that in June. A little extra, because I'm always willing to grow, evolve, and again, know what I'm not really doing the right way, and to kind of just fix certain things. Because I do therapy, and it's like once every couple of weeks. But, and I have my other little, things that I do on the side as well, and just trying to keep myself balanced and even keeled. But even like I said, just as the journey that I'm on, and thanks to the pandemic, it really had to set me down and really learn some stuff about me, especially when you are like confined in a place for a year and some change. Yeah, you're like, woo.
Everything is on a goddamn magnifying glass. I swear to God. So it's like we have the micro, issues of our own personal world. Like, you think you had problems, now they're just right there in front of you. You have to deal with them. And like on one hand, we have like these, really big macro issues, which I love that they're like, as crazy as they are, I love that there's now attention on them. You know what I mean? But it's been fucking overwhelming. Like, I'm a trauma specialist, and I've been overwhelmed.
Right. I was going to say, right. Even for you, I'm sure it's had some type of impact on your life as well. So, and mental, physically, all of it.
And for any of us who are moms who are doing the homeschool shit, like, I didn't sign up for that. I'm not that mom. Like, big ups to the moms who want to like do homeschool, and they like to like do crafts and bake cookies and like teach 5th grade math. Like, that's not me.
Listen, I used to appreciate to drive to work and drop my son off for before care and be like, I'll see you at 4:30. Yeah. Like, be all you can be, and I'll be back, but yeah, it's been a whole big change, and it's a 50-50 because I've gotten to learn my son more, because I've had more time with him, and I'm working 2 jobs in the house. So, 3, and helping him with school, being a mom, my 2 jobs. It's just a lot going on in this camp, especially because he's 5. So so I'm like,
you are on full overspeed, overdrive all the time. Yeah.
Yes, I am. Yes. And people be like, what do you do for fun? I was like, I get to watch things I haven't seen in a while and catch up with some sleep. That's what I do for fun. Totally. But I'm always busy. So, but it's all good. And I appreciate it though. It's still a learning curve for me. Yeah. And I'm learning every day with just even patience. That's been my biggest thing. So,
and I think it's important to know that we're not alone in this. Like, you know what I mean? Like, here you are over in Baltimore, and like, you are one, as I am one of my many, many parents across the country who are like, on one hand, I love having my kid home. It's been kind of dope. But in the same sense, it's like, holy shit, this is it's like you take on another full-time job now with the whole school situation. And it's kind of like, on one hand, you want to be really grateful. And then on the other hand, you're like, wow, this is no joke.
This is like really serious. Like, and I think that's why I just kind of try to keep active and stay busy, so I don't take too much time to really focus in on like, this is serious. Like, we are here. Like, like, are we going to be all right? Is there a summer camp? Do I feel that you should go to camp? Like, is that going to be safe? Like, can you keep your mask on for several hours? You think you could do that? Like, it's hard, and I'm just watching it again continue to unfold and see where we end in the next couple of months and the next update from there. So,
and we put the reason why we created Life Camp is because it was like when we first went into quarantine, all of a sudden I had this like space in my life that I didn't have before. And we saw, not only had this program been like brewing in the back of my head and I just never had time to put it together, but all of a sudden the need for support and for like doing the personal work was like on Front Street like never before. Like, anytime I got online, anytime I was talking to my homies or whatever, everybody was like, holy shit, I really need to do some work. And so Life Camp really came out of this great need that was happening. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
So we made it, in that sense, we made it super accessible for individuals such as, like, I'm a single mom, you know what I mean? I know you are too. Like, we didn't want to create programs that were like only for individuals who had all this, you know, luxury of time and resource. We really wanted to make it available for people to dive in, regardless of their circumstances or what their current situation is, you know?
And I think honestly, from last year when everything really hit, I think it just helped people. I think it helped people put things in perspective, and it brought them to a whole nother level in life. Yeah. And it was like, you know what? This is now all about growth. This is about experience. This is about really getting in tune with, because you had nothing to do but actually get to know who you are.
It's so true. But you're taking a really optimistic, like, I love what you're saying, because that's like the mature optimist, you know, like really being in the present moment about this experience. And it's beautiful that you're speaking to that, but like, there are going to be people, and we talk about it all the time, there are going to be people in this quarantine that, like, they fucking flounder and they fall hard. And then there's going to be people that thrive, and there's going to be people that learn, you know, they're going to find a gift in this somewhere, as hard as it is. So I think, like, you're talking about, like, mindset is really, really critical in this. And it's challenging for different people too, for different reasons. Do you know what I mean?
Right. Definitely.
But I guess more importantly, that's why we have to have community. Do you know what I mean? So that we don't feel alone in this.
Right. And you know, after every 21 days, your brain just keeps reprogramming. So whatever way you program it from that first 21 days, it continues to keep going. It's an ongoing cycle, but it's how you trigger your brain to reprogram. It's either you're going to go up or you're going to come down, and you're going to come down hard. And that's the 50-50, you know, mixed bag with this, especially like you said, it can go either way.
Yeah.
For people. Yes.
It's been so interesting because, like, you know, we met on Instagram, do you know what I mean? And it's like so funny that I, like, don't even like social media, but I use it in my business, you know what I'm saying? But I got to tell you, since we've been in quarantine, I have met so many dope people that, like, I wouldn't have had access to. Do you know what I mean? You included, because, like, you know, we're like tucked away in our houses in the different parts of the country. And so on one hand, we all know, like, the evil behind social media. And then on the flip side, like, we're getting to have this connection now as a result of it. And there's like a beauty to it in and of itself. And I have to say, like, I've leaned into that because I live in the rural hills of Northern California. There ain't shit going on over here. So I am in the city. You know what I mean? So it's weird. So for me, like, reaching out into these spaces has actually been really awesome.
Yes, same here. And I've met a lot of good, cool people, seeing different things that people are doing, the experiences, yourself as well. And I was like, trauma. I was like, don't we all, honey? Yes, I need to hit her up and talk to her and see, because I saw one of your videos and I was like, oh, this is dope. I was like, I like what she was in the messages that you were putting together. And I was like, I definitely would love to talk to her. And then, of course, not even knowing you were a Virgo. So it was just like instant, like, let me inbox her real quick.
I love that.
So, Star, where can people reach you, especially if they're interested for your next class in June, if they want to sign up and get some insight and get some help? Where can they find you?
So the best place to get, like, all sorts of free content, and I'm going to get back. I took a little hiatus from Instagram the past month, but I'm back in the game now. And so Instagram is the best, Star Rose Bond. Over there, or you can go to my website, which is www.starrosebond.com. So, but those are the two places. I've got lots of free resources. I've got tons of content. I post videos on shit all the time, and you can just hit me up in my inbox there.
Okay, awesome. And I'm sure they will, because I know people are still trying to continue to keep getting and pushing forward and getting to that one place that they're really trying to get to in life, which is trying to get some sanity and some peace back.
Yeah,
especially
right now is such an awesome time. I was talking to my homegirl, like, I think we are at the precipice of really doing some dope shit with mental health. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's a huge movement on, like, decolonize mental health, decolonize your bookshelf, decolonize, like, your Netflix, you know what I'm saying? Which is dope. And so there's this whole new, like, breath of fresh air that we're bringing into mental health, into community, into activism. And even though it's always been there, do you know what I mean? I think it's really it's getting the attention it deserves. And I think that there's more people invested in the mechanisms of actually going about that. So for me, I'm super excited to be on the forefront of that shit and creating as many opportunities as possible for diversity, for inclusion, and just getting the information to the communities that we want, that we want having this. So I'm stoked. As weird as it is right now, there's a lot of awesome things happening too.
But I'm excited for you. And especially when you're happy about something that is coming into fruition and you can see the picture actually starting to shape up. Yeah, it's something to be happy and proud of, especially to be working in it. So that's great. That's awesome. Yes. I think everybody, once this is pretty much over, and I don't know when that's going to be.
What that looks like, right? Yeah.
I don't even know. Everybody's like, it's just like people are going braless out in like Florida and Texas. And I was like, oh my God, like, are y'all in the green? Like, let me find out, because I could have swore our numbers were going back up here. So I don't understand. It's like, we are never going to get through it if you guys don't understand it, how serious you really need to take this as far as for us to get out of it.
It's crazy. I got to tell you real quick. So I was able to drive down to Mexico, to Baja. I have a friend that's got some beachfront property down there. And so we were able to go down there and like have a little social distance thing. We had our own little like cabana. We did this a few weeks ago, and it was like a safe way for us to like get away. I went down to Mexico. They are handling shit for COVID. Like it was so impressive. I felt 10 times safer in Mexico than I did here. It was like, there was no drama about like masks, no mask. People just did what they had to do. You went into a store, they like had sanitizer stuff on the ground. So you stepped on it. They made you do your hands. They give you a temperature just to go into a store, a restaurant, anywhere. And there was like, people were just following rules. It wasn't bullshit. There was no like drama about it. It was just like, we're here to be socially responsible. Let's hurry up and do what we can to get out of this. And it was so crazy to see this in a developing country, right, who has so far less resources than we do. And they were coming together as a community. And I came back here to this fucking nonsense. And I'm like, we're so ridiculous here sometimes.
Yeah. Trust me. We are like, it should be like, do you know that person? Like, no, I don't know who they are at all. I don't know. I've never seen them a day in my life. Can you come help me? Thank you. Like, yeah, you just be like, I'm not affiliated with those people. I don't know them.
I know.
I don't know them, but you're right. Certain countries, and a friend of mine went to Mexico for a wedding and was like, it's fine here. Like everything, they're on point. There is like no drama.
It was crazy. I admit, because I didn't really, I had heard that, but like when I got down there, it was like they made it look simple. Plus I had to get a COVID test to come back or whatever. I went into a clinic, I paid $60. I got the test results 4 hours later. Like access to testing was so easy and efficient. It was phenomenal. And I was like, I can't believe that this is what we're doing here in the United States.
Right. Yeah. Right. Exactly. Good luck, USA. Okay. Well, thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate it. I know being your busy schedule, my busy schedule, I'm just so happy we had a chance to make this work out.
Me too.
Chance to chop it up and talk about this and to hopefully maybe help another or 3 people from this interview today. So like I said, I will be in contact and I'll be in touch. And I'm sure you're going to probably get some people that's going to be contacting you as well for that June.
And I got you covered. If you want to come in the program, I'll take care of you. So like whatever you need. And then again, this was such an honor to be here with you. And let's definitely stay in touch because I love diving in with you for sure.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Star. Have a great day and enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Thank you. You too.
All right. Bye.